Welcome everybody to episode 55 of the Breaking Balls podcast. Once again in person. They say once you get married, it's all downhill from here. For my co-host, if Talladega is any indication, we gotta work on something here.
Yeah, tough start to say the least. I am a married man. I put a ring on it. I would not put a ring on this race at Talladega. We at least have plenty to talk about because we couldn't stop running into each other at super speedway. It's Dega, baby.
Flags in the air. Boogity, boogity, boogity. Let's go racing, boys.
All right, everybody. It is episode 55, Breaking Balls. Once again in person. We just reached out and touched each other. I have a double queen room out here in California for the night because, one bed for me, one bed for my podcast co-host. We're making this work out here in Southern California, Ad.
Yeah, neither one of us have a ton of audio-video experience, to say the least, so this is kind of what we're getting, and this is what we're rocking with, and obviously post-wedding, so we're a little bit hurt, a little bit banged up, but not nearly as banged up as some of the drivers on the track, because there was a lot of contact at the end of this race, Bob.
Let me just tell you a verbal meme real quick before we get into it. Ryan Priest, Kyle Larson, that was me and Rum and Cokes this weekend, it felt like. We'll get into it, of course. Obviously, Kyle Busch, your winner today at Talladega, second win of the year, and Ad, you kind of mentioned it when we were talking. Is this redemption for Daytona?
Yeah, I think this feels like the racing gods smiled upon Kyle Busch today. I think everybody kind of felt awful for him at Daytona because everybody said, if this race was a few years ago, he wins this race. Lo and behold, here we come. Karma is his boyfriend, and here we are. Kyle Busch gets his win. Second win of the year, I believe. Just, can't say enough good things about RCR and what he's brought to that team. I think he's really kind of turned the page there, but got a little bit lucky today, Bob.
Yeah, you know what, though? In these restrictor plate races, it feels like luck is kind of the thing that brings it all together for most of these drivers. Yeah, you got to have a lot of skill and you got to put yourself in position, but you had a couple overtime finishes. I'll be honest with you, I don't think Kyle Busch was on anybody's radar, even on those last overtime finishes. Mm-hmm. I mean, it just kind of felt like when the chaos kind of happened around him, he was the car that came out and, again, good position, a little luck, and your restrictor plate win. That's kind of the formula.
It just goes to show you, at these restrictor plate tracks, it's not always the best car that wins. But it is usually the best drivers, or the guys who generally will have a lot of wheel time, or guys who, race a whole ton, because when things get chaotic, they can wheel anything. And I think Kyle Busch certainly falls into that category. So was he on our radar? No, probably not, but he definitely should have been, because at the end of that race, he's on the short list of drivers that you would pick 1 or 2 laps remaining if you had to put money on it. And, if he's even close to the lead, you would feel comfortable putting money on Kyle Busch, or at least I would.
Yeah, and it goes to show, like you said, with Daytona, that, this is both races now that RCR has come out and really shown that, they can compete in these restrictor plate finishes. That's something that you can move on, because obviously Talladega is in the playoffs moving forward again this year, so going to be a critical race, down in the fall there. But, again, big momentum for that 8 team. We kind of mentioned them as kind of the darling of the season the first couple weeks, and then they kind of fell off a little bit. Seems like they're hit or miss when they come off the garage, or they come out of the garage, but today, they're going to victory lane.
Yep, bang on today. It really has been a tale of 2 seasons for them, because, like you said, if they come out and their setup's on, they've got a shot, but there's been weeks where they've been complete, almost no-shows to the track. But at the end of the day, like I said, I just think you can't really put a value on what Kyle Busch is bringing to this team. I think, not many drivers back into one. And this feels like, as weird as this sounds, this feels like the most skillful backing into a win that we've seen in a very long time, because ultimately this race was not very eventful. And for Kyle Busch to quietly just find a way to be in position, be in striking distance, and ultimately take advantage of it, that's, all the credit in the world.
Yeah, and we might as well get into those overtime finishes or those overtime restarts, because that's what got us in there. Obviously, the race ends under yellow. They get back to the line there. We mentioned Kyle Busch was kind of the guy that we didn't think would be there. I think everyone thought Ryan Blaney was definitely going to be in contention today after led over 40 laps. Really looked like the dominant car of the second half of the day. And him and Bubba Wallace were both really strong competitors, and they kind of want to say it, but they kind of took each other out there. I mean, obviously Bubba was just defending. He's trying to, block on the last lap there, but they take each other out. And Kyle Busch just kind of walks away, almost like the Bristol Dirt Race last year, a little bit.
Yeah, I think that you definitely saw a little bit of Bubba's inexperience being in the front of races at the end of this, because I think with how high Blaney ended up going up the track, I don't think Bubba needed to go all the way up there with him. And on the broadcast, or at least what I saw, the bottom line was just instantly going to overtake him if he went up there. So it just didn't make a ton of sense for him to go up there. I understand not wanting to let Blaney have anything or, kind of get a run, but I think he had enough of a block on him the first time that, because the way it looked to me at least was, he went up to block and then kind of stayed for a second and then made the decision to go all the way up to block. I think if he stays down and kind of in the racing group there, I think it would be a little bit of a better result, but ultimately, I've never had to make that decision at 190 miles an hour. So I get it. And I could totally understand how he would think, okay, I'm not giving this lead up. I need to go up there and make the block. But ultimately, like you said, it was a shame because it took two of the best cars out of the race.
Yeah, and that's Bubba Wallace's MO with restricted plays. He's an aggressive driver. He makes no bones about it. Gets him in good positions, gets him in bad positions. At the end of these races, it's chaotic. You get what you get there. But again, like you said, the two really strong cars. I wanted to see a great finish there.
Yeah.
You hate to see that, but with these restarts, I mean, that wasn't even the worst of it all. I mean, good lord. I mean, we talked about the Larson and Priest thing. I mean, they had beef coming into this. I think that they're just happy to be alive after this race.
Yeah. Never have I been more thankful that the driver's side. I just to think if Kyle Larson were on the driver's side when that impact was made, I'm thankful. I think the whole sport is really kind of exhaling a little bit today because. It's almost callous in a way because I think the entire pre-race show, you go to commercial and they're always talking about the big one and stuff like that. And they're showing cars flipping and things like that. And all that's great because, at the end of the day, people do enjoy watching crashes. That's always been a part of NASCAR. There's always been the fans who only tune in to see the wrecks. And I get that, but maybe that's not who you should be marketing to as far as growth of your sport because at the end of the day, what type of message does that send to your drivers? And the guys behind the wheel who are going at this every week, it's like, look, if you're hoping for us to crash and to have that big one moment, let's not forget that, the big one killed one of the sport's greatest drivers and cut his career incredibly short. So I just think at this point, it's a little bit callous to be especially with everything that kind of went on today, to be constantly marketing the big one, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's part of the territory of Talladega. Some people like it, some people hate it, and with NASCAR, people watch a lot for the wrecks. At the end of the day, the aggressive driving is what propels these wrecks, and it's not something that's going to change. But especially, and we'll get into the car later. But you can't generate a ton of runs in this car. You can't do a lot, so you have to take those aggressive moments when even there's a little bit of a chance there. And you saw even the first overtime restart, Ross Chastain. Well, I guess everyone will always blame Ross for something here, and this is just, one more week on the podcast.
I don't know, though. This one feels warranted in a way.
See, I was going to say the opposite, actually. I thought it was, it was a little bit of a tight move. I don't know if the middle was probably the way there. We'd never had to do it at 190, but it was definitely a risky move. But again, it's an overtime restart.
I think
if it's not now, win.
I think that's the hardest part, is that I understood it, but at the end of the day, it's when you're looking at it from a very zoomed out helicopter view, you can see that there's not a ton of room to make that work. And like you said, I think, unless you're really sitting behind the wheel and you don't know the information that he's getting from his spotter at that point, so who knows? But it did seem very much like the anti-Ross Chastain crowd has definitely got some ammo in this one. But I thought I didn't love the move when I first saw it. I've since watched it a couple times and have kind of come off of the hard stance of, oh, this is Ross's fault. But I don't know if that was the place to make that move. I'll say that.
Coming out of turn 2 with, another lap and a half, that's fair. You got some good cars around you that, ultimately got affected there. Larson, Almirola. There was multiple guys. Chastain. That had great cars. Chastain was running top 8 all day.
Mm-hmm.
Almirola led multiple laps, and it shows that he is. We talked about him on those flat mile and a half, or those flat half miles, but he's also a restrictor plate guru. I mean, he's very good in those races. So, I noticed Stuart Haas again, another good week, by the way, quietly.
Yeah, one of those things. I think you talked about it because our friends were asking. We got to watch this race with friends. We'll get into that later, but they were asking kind of about manufacturers and things like that. And Bob kind of hit the nail on the head earlier. He said, Ford's kind of been hit and miss, but anytime they come to super speedways, they kind of have a chance. And Stuart Haas proved him 100% right. He looked like an oracle in front of all of our friends, which was kind of nice for him. Props to Bob. But yeah, they definitely did something right. And it seems as if Ford goes, obviously, as Stuart Haas goes, in my opinion, as weird as that is. But I don't know. I don't value Penske as much in that Ford relationship. But yeah, it was definitely good to see. It seemed like a lot of the Stuart Haas guys had good days.
I agree with that, actually, where Penske is always going to have that gold standard. They're going to be always successful for the most part as the top Ford team. But if a team like Stuart Haas is performing, they are technically the flagship team, being a four-car team. If they're performing, that means Ford is probably doing well as a whole.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that, I think Penske, you don't chalk up Roger Penske's success to Ford. You chalk it up to Roger Penske. So I think that's where the divide is that I think where Stuart Haas is that Ford is more of an equal partner in the relationship with Stuart Haas than they can ever be with Penske just because of the amount of money that Mr. Penske has.
Well, I will say this, out of the manufacturer talk, because you did say it, you had stage one. We'll get a little bit into the race just because I want to touch on this part. You had all three manufacturers pit on their own. Chevy did fine. Chevy did great. And then you have Toyota. Okay. Tyler Reddick comes in, full send, spins around, hits the wall. Tyler Reddick finds a way to have a bad day early. And I got to appreciate that. If you're a Tyler Reddick fan, it's going to be a good day or a bad day within the end of stage one. That's impressive.
I mean, that's the cool part about it is that no matter what manufacturer he's driving for, it's good, or it's very good, or it's very bad. There's almost no in between for Tyler Reddick.
The man is consistent. I'll give him that. He's so consistent. And then you get the Ford. Then you have Tyler Reddick spinning. Then the next, I think, either a lap or two later, the Fords come in and Chase Briscoe does a burnout on pit road. Basically, he comes in, he spins out, cooks the tires. I mean, everyone had trouble. It looked like getting into the pit road that early pit sequence. But Chase Briscoe comes in, completely spins around to where his nose is facing the rest of the Fords, and then he's stuck there on pit road for like 2 laps where he's just trying to do a burnout to get out, and it was just all of our friends were watching it like, is this a professional series? What the hell's going on?
Yeah, no, but everybody was like, why is this difficult? And it's like, look, you don't understand. They're coming from a high rate of speed. They got to go and get under pit road speed, which is difficult, especially given everything because you're trying to maximize your time, but. Yeah, at the end of the day, I thought I was looking at kind of a live feed of maybe a Mario Kart race because it seemed like there was a whole ton of bananas sitting there in front of pit road because nobody could get in. And like you said, luckily the Chevys were clean, or I don't know why luckily, but luckily the Chevys were clean because...
I think luckily is a good word because if all 3 manufacturers had something like that, it would have just been like, okay,
yeah, I think you're right. I mean, at least with 66%, you could say, well, at least Chevy didn't mess it up, but... Yeah, it's kind of wild because you don't often think about how difficult that process is, but today it certainly was difficult.
And we mentioned Chase Briscoe. He spins out there. And I'm looking at the finishing order here just to kind of, start on that a little bit. Because we've got a lot to talk about, obviously, on and off the track here.
Yes,
but just this finishing order, Chase Briscoe ended up 4th still.
And that's where I was... Sure. That's exactly what I was going to say. Is like, well... After all the embarrassment of sitting there and spinning your tires and doing a burnout during stage 1, you still ended up in the top 5. And considering everything Chase Briscoe's got going on right now, hand surgery, I mean, all sorts of things going on with that guy at the moment. And for him to be able to come back, persevere, and to get that team a finish that they deserve today, I mean, all credit to him. Because it's almost similar to what we were talking about with Logano last week with... If you fall out of things early, it's very hard to kind of keep yourself engaged in the race and kind of locked in because, of course, you don't have a chance to win, and that's really all these guys want to do. But I got to give a huge shout-out to Chase Briscoe because that result, I just feel like it's going to come back and pay dividends for him later in the year.
And, to break down this top 10 as well, another top 10 for Todd Gilliland, which... was so weird because I'm looking at the number. He's in that number 36 car because they moved Zane Smith into that 38 car as the charter car today, and they entered the 36 as an extra car. And lo and behold, Todd gets another great result. Gets collected there at the end of the wreck, but, top 10, he's already I think he's already matched, if not passed, his top 10s from last year.
Yeah.
And then you have Harrison Burton spins out after he led a couple laps late in the race. We keep talking about it, but we're comparing the two because it's really their last names and when they came into the sport. The development from Todd Gillen in a much, in my opinion, lesser equipment ride. Maybe it's not that much of a difference, I guess, with front row, and they've gotten better, but, to be that second car and now technically the third car in some weeks, not a lot of, funding and, focus on that compared to Michael McDowell. He's still getting results at the end of the day. Could have been easy for him to quit and, kind of lay down, but he's still doing the best.
Yeah, 100%. Michael McDowell obviously got collected in that wreck early, so you thought front row was kind of going to be a no-show in this. But, yeah, lo and behold, looking at the top 5, that was the best part of it, Bob, is that you were so shocked at the fact that Tom Gillen finished where he did that wouldn't even notice the guy who finished right after him with J.J. Yui and the Rick Ware rocket, baby. Are you kidding me? In the top 10 all of a sudden?
Well, I hate to burst the bubble. The results got changed a touch. He is 11th now.
What?
I know. I'm not as thrilled. Uh-huh. I know.
I thought it was my wedding gift.
It should have been, buddy. It should have been.
Do I have to cry?
You're not going to cry on your wedding night.
No, I'm not going to cry.
Not over a Rick Ware machine, but
certainly not.
The 51 car ends up P11 still. He drove down into the big one at the end there, and all it took was Cody Ware not being in the car, I guess, and they'll finally show up again.
Who'd have thought, man? The Rick Ware Racing Empire marches on without his son, and I guess we'll have to see what life looks like after the heir apparent is probably not going to be anywhere near a car for a long time.
And have to mention this because we obviously have been talking up the Fords. Chris Buescher P3, Brad Keselowski P5. RFK, man, they have had a great season as far as compared to last year. They have made, in my opinion, a big gap as far as their consistency.
I think for me, the biggest thing is that you can tell Brad Keselowski is back to focusing on racing. He's not worried about constantly having to build the culture of RFK. The culture seems to be set. And now it feels like they can start really taking these steps forward to kind of, it was kind of sad because when we were going through the broadcast, you saw that Brad's on I think a 71 race winless streak or something like that since he won a restrictor plate race, and that's just Brad Keselowski is too talented of a driver to not be in victory lane, and I think it's just going to make it so much sweeter for when he eventually does get back to it because he has completely changed the culture of that garage.
And he was up there again all day. If it wasn't for that late wreck where, Bubba comes in and kind of knocks into him, comes in after he tries to save it, Keselowski might have ended up P2, P3 there. Who knows? It really, you don't want to speculate here, but, man, that RFK team is maximizing their runs this year, and it's not just on the super speedways, but, this is their bread and butter.
And you notice how they're always together. There's usually, you see teammates that really have to kind of go and find each other. These are two teammates who are usually racing on very similar strategies, are on the, kind of at the same points of the racetrack, and they move together. And I think, of course this isn't a team sport, in the traditional sense that, your teammate is really trying to do the same thing as you because you're both trying to win the race, but to be able to work together and to maximize the setups that they're putting together and to really kind of execute their game plan within the race, I got to give all credit to them. I just think they're doing a great job this year.
Yeah, I thought this was the week for Brad, but it's coming. It's coming for this team. And Chris Buescher has quietly had a great last couple of seasons.
Yeah.
Guy that is under the radar there, obviously has, been with that team for a while and has stuck it out with Brad. And that's a really good 1A, 1B kind of combo because you automatically think Brad Keselowski's the A guy there, but Buescher outruns him every other race, it feels like. They're very consistent with each other. It's not like one's just outperforming the other where, Kyle Busch and Austin Dillon kind of comes into terms and things like that. It's a very equal team.
Yeah, and I think, like I just said, though, I think as Brad kind of gets to be a little bit further away from that owner role, I don't know. Honestly, it's kind of hard to tell because, in the new driver-owner era, and with all that he's had to do kind of coming in, it's just curious. I am very curious to see, as time goes on, if Brad is able to separate himself from Chris Buescher, or is this just one of these things where it's going to be 1A and 1B permanently? Because I think if you would have asked people, even going back maybe 5 years and just kind of explain the situation before it even happened. There's a very clear Brad Keselowski. You would rather have him than Chris Buescher, but I'm curious to see as time goes on, and obviously as Brad ages, Chris continues to kind of continue to, get starts and that type of thing. I'm just interested to see if the gap widens or if we stay with this 1A, 1B relationship, because it seems like it's working for him.
And another team that has kind of had some leadership changes the last few years, Legacy Motor Club. I have had no bones about their struggles this season. Great day for them.
Absolutely.
Eric Jones P6 and Noah Gragson ends up P32. Didn't finish, but I mean he was at the top of the field most of the day. He gets turned late in the race, goes hard into the wall there in that Larson mess and all that. And you hate to see that, but I mean, man, Noah Gragson actually was a contender today, and it was a legitimate contender.
Yeah, it was kind of wild because it almost felt like for a while it was a little bit of an Xfinity top 10 because you had Ty Gibbs floating around, you had Noah Gragson floating around, we had Harrison Burton after Jeb Burton stole his thunder the day before.
Man, you're right.
I mean, it really did kind of feel like this was like, man, it's good to see the future progressing. I mean, that's the coolest part of it for me was that these have been names that NASCAR fans have known for years and have constantly been, okay, you got to look out for these guys, and today, I mean, short of some, just a miscue and kind of not understanding, what was going on with the cautions and stuff for Ty Gibbs, there was a lot of really strong finishes from young guys today.
Yeah, and obviously Ty runs out of gas right on the very end of the front stretch there as the overtime restarts getting going. Blaney was close to running out on fuel. I saw on the radio. They said, just send it. We'll see what happens. Honestly, that caution might have been the best thing for all those guys that were close.
Absolutely.
But yeah, Ty Gibbs, great day. Hate to not see the results there, but in the last few weeks, having those top 10s and that top 11 finishes, they're definitely building something in that 54 team quietly. But, as a rookie, it's not like back in the day where rookies were contenders for wins a lot. Now, you just got to get laps, run clean races, and, get experience. And him and Noah Gragson both getting valuable experience leading fields today.
Yeah.
That's big.
Huge.
That's huge for your demeanor.
Yeah, and it's just, like you said, the demeanor is what you really can't understate there. It's that I belong here. It's one of these things, I think, human beings naturally try and convince ourselves, even if we're out of place and we can fully understand how we got there, you can kind of play with yourself in your head and kind of sit there and, I don't deserve this, I can't do that type of thing. And it's just good to see that a lot of these guys who we've been hearing about are looking to take the next step. And I just can't wait, and I hope that we get these mixed up top 10s for the rest of the year, because this was fun.
Yeah, and this is the parity that you get not only in the restrictor plate races, but NASCAR is hoping with the next-gen car that some of these teams like RFK, like Legacy, that they can be more competitive in a consistency basis, not just on the restrictor plates. I want to see them on the ovals, but it's good to see.
It certainly is a step in the right direction. I'll say this, though, Bob. This next-gen car is frustrating the hell out of me, man. And it's almost making it, it's really making the sport difficult to watch. I mean,
I saw a great tweet. Somebody commented it under one of the big accounts, so I can't get credit because I don't know exactly what said it. I'm so sorry, random Twitter user. But they really kind of put it explained like in 5 way, and I kind of loved it, where the next-gen car fixed a lot of problems that the last car had, and that the last car's great things got killed by the next-gen car. So everything that the last car did great is now bad, and everything it did bad is now great, in theory. I mean, not that simple, but...
No, I mean, but I get it. It's 100% right. It's like anything. It's like, when you have to make a choice between, two things, there's obviously pros and cons, and I think the pros of this next-gen car, at the beginning of it was, okay, it's going to be more cost-effective, and, we'll see some more parity, and then obviously driver safety, but then, from its debut, none of these things have really obviously we've gotten the different winners and stuff from last year, which, we love to see that type of parity, but at the end of the day, you can see that the bigger teams are still finding a way to kind of modify these single-source parts, Hendrick Motorsports, but...
RCR!
Sorry. Dude, kind of drafty in here.
Yeah.
What a cough. That was weird.
Well, we're going to be handing out some penalties and some bronchitis here in the field.
That's kind of weird. Anyway. But yeah, it just feels like it opened up a new can of worms that I think NASCAR was eventually going to have to open going to a new car, but it seems as if this car is causing more problems than it's offering in solutions right now, at least in my opinion.
Well, the problem is, at least to me, on this, and this is just super speedway specific here now. We can get into a lot of the problems in the next gen car. You can call me, you can text me, you can DM me. I will gladly, we can talk about all those things. But for the super speedway itself, the biggest thing for me, Ad, is that you don't see that third lane. You don't see it, and drivers have been adamant that you just can't generate runs. It's not the same. You have to have a super strong multiple cars to even have somewhat of a chance in the top lane, and even then, good luck. Good luck hanging in there. It's double file racing, and the track is so wide that it's frustrating as a fan because you've grown up watching these pack racing, whether it was the tandem drafting or it was the big pack racing where it was 3-4 wide when it got hectic and crazy. You're not seeing that right now.
Dude, I would literally kill someone to see a tandem race right now. Like, that's where I'm at after today. Like, it's not my favorite style of racing at all, but it would certainly be a little bit better than what we had today, because this whole follow the leader thing, it makes it deduces NASCAR to the stereotype of all these guys do is drive and turn left. That's really that's all this car allows them to do. There's no movement, you can't generate a run on your own, you can't, if you get yourself out of the groove, I mean, no better example than Michael McDowell, who got in that wreck early, obviously fell out of the groove and just got lapped all day. I mean, that just goes to show you, obviously that happens at super speedways anyway, but the absolute inability to generate speed individually in these cars is a huge issue, because what used to be NASCAR's bread and butter has simply just become frustrating to watch.
You want Talladega to be a race that people are excited about. The casual fans are excited about. When you, like, today, for example, we might as well just get into it today.
Yeah.
Adam got married last night. Not sure if you heard. Not sure if you listened to the podcast from Thursday night. If you haven't, we had the now Mrs. Adam O'Shea on the podcast in episode 54. We got to hear the story of love, and I would recommend it if you haven't heard it. But
yeah, Love happens to be a Spotify exclusive, though. So if you are going to listen to this, it is not on YouTube. It is only on Spotify.
And Apple Podcasts. But
yeah, well, whatever.
Well, anyway. We're sitting there, Adam's kind of, what did you call it? Kind of the, post-wedding get together.
This was kind of like just the post-wedding. The only thing that could have made this more traditional is if it was some sort of sweat lodge that we walked into, but basically it was like a group processing and hangover session from our wedding. Kind of got everybody together to just kind of, regroup a little bit, kind of digest what happened, and
recap the nights,
kind of get the stories that for me, you miss a lot at your own wedding, so there was a lot for me to get filled in on. But man, it was fun for us today, because obviously first race that since we started doing the podcast that I got to sit down and actually watch it with my co-host and kind of have the conversation back and forth during the race, which I loved. And then
it's very different.
It was
very different,
because usually it's a text message, so I can ignore you or you can ignore me,
and
and
if there's something where you can't elaborate and have that it's just different.
It's just one of these things to where it was kind of fun to just be able to go back and forth. And on top of that, I had the rest of my groomsmen just kind of sitting around there with us. None of them are necessarily huge NASCAR fans, but all kind of understood that Bob and I needed to watch the race to make sure that we could, bring this podcast to you. And I gotta say, these are all guys who are kind of in NASCAR's demographic, and I'm not saying that I was kind of, what we'll call it, hounded. Hounded could be the word, pestered even, to change the channel to, the NHL, or maybe even the NBA game that was on. It was Sacramento and Golden State. So, is this a huge problem, or am I just kind of thinking about it a little bit too locally here, Bob? Because I think it was tough to be in a room with, a bunch of dudes who were kind of 20 to 35, and it feels like this is where the sport wants to be growing, and it felt pretty stagnant in the room today.
Yeah, and, obviously we hyped Talladega up, the media hypes Talladega up, the big one, the drafting and everything.
Whoa. Chase Elliott's back.
And Chase Elliott's back again. If you haven't gotten the sponsored ad still, the 9 is back again this week. I don't know if that's going to be a weekly thing. Chase Elliott's still here. Or...
Dude, Chase Elliott's about to be back for 4 weeks. It's going to be remarkably so back.
So back. That's stage 1 wins we played for years in the Irene Hall, in the pool hall.
He's so back.
But anyway, I mean, Talladega is supposed to be this race that even as you bring a group of people in that don't know much about the sport, they can watch it and be entertained. You didn't get that, really. Even as, diehard race fans like us, there was at times we were leaving more to be desired on the track than anything. And you're watching the group kind of, almost want something to happen. They're begging for something to happen, man. It's so tough because you're telling them, oh, look how close they are. They're going this fast. But they're not really, they're not passing.
It's very difficult, too, because so many of the great wide shots that you get at Talladega and some of these super speedways, they're awesome to see the overhead view, but what they don't do justice is the speed that they're moving at. And that's kind of what you need to sell this sport, is that this is essentially high-speed chess. This is one of the better games of speed chess you'll ever watch, between a lot of people who, if you were to poll them, I would guess they don't play a ton of chess. But this feels, I don't know, it just feels like you said, I just wanted, you could almost cut the tension in my living room with a knife. We just wanted something to happen, and it just never quite did.
Until the end, and Kyle Larson almost died in front of half of our friends and family.
Yeah, and that's what made it worse. It was like the one thing that was interesting was the fact that Kyle Larson's freaking side door was basically about to stab him. So, I don't know. They gotta do something about this car, man, because this next-gen car, let's just let them spend money. I don't care if people get freaking blown or bought out of the water. Let capitalism reign, baby. Your entire sport is based off of advertising. Everything about your revenue is. Why aren't we making it trickle more? Let's get everybody, let's get Margaret Thatcher out of the grave. Let's go trickle down economics fully. I want NASCAR to just pump some money into this thing. Let's let these big boys who've got the deep pockets spend money. I don't need to see Rick Ware racing with Hendrick Motorsports. I know that's fake. You don't need to manufacture that for me. There's no way that those two teams should ever be competing, given the fact that one is spending millions of dollars and the other one is just trying to figure out how to keep the racing empire alive. It's frustrating. Let's bring back the days of having guys who, okay, yeah, they're not going to finish further than, above 20th, but they're at least going to be competitive in their tax bracket, per se, of where they would finish. Let's see these, let's see the big boys go at it. Let's have a top 10 of Hendrick, RFK, and Joe Gibbs and stuff like that. Like, I don't understand it. Why are we somehow making it that, like, money is a bad thing in this sport? Man, the more money that comes into this sport, it's going to lift every boat, including these smaller teams. So, NASCAR's got a problem right now, and it's this car, and more problems than they can fix.
It's tough too because it's not an easy fix.
Nope.
You're kind of stuck with what you got and hoping you can tinker and toy with it, and something will change, and maybe you hit on the right combination. But there's not an easy answer. Like you said, the money thing is what it is. I mean, but the problem is when you start to try and save money, and it starts to hinder your product, you're going to lose out in the long term.
And that's exactly what my argument is that, like, look, if the parity were as it was, and it's just like I guess the consistency of the racing was still good, I don't think anybody would have any issue. But the fact that any even casual NASCAR fan can look at it and say, this isn't it. That, like, it was so funny because even today, one of Anna's uncles did a NASCAR racing experience, and he basically drove a car that was straight out of the Jeff Gordon T-Rex era. And it was funny because Bob and I were looking at each other like, man, I would kill to see those cars on the track today, because this next-gen car just feels like literally a rolling disappointment.
Yeah, it's frustrating. And the biggest thing for me is, I'm a diehard NASCAR fan. You are too. We're going to be watching every week.
We're watching.
But the problem is, when we have 10 to 12 people, like you said, that are the NASCAR's demographic, they're trying to hit, the F1's been slowly taking over, that 18 to 49 demographic. We had 10 to 12 of those guys in there today. And I'll be honest with you, Ed, I think we could pull them. I don't think a single one of them came away and was like, I need to watch next week.
No.
And that's a problem. And not one.
No. And the bigger issue is that they literally, as we were watching a NASCAR race, they're all like, oh, hey, do you guys watch any F1? And it's like, oh, man, like...
And they didn't know anything about F1 either, but they at least, they know that F1 is out there, partially because Netflix, partially the young demographic. It's the young hip thing, and we can talk about the F1 quality all we want because it's racing, and F1's just as shitty as NASCAR, but F1's got the excitement, the glitz, and the glamour that goes around it. Mm-hmm. NASCAR's got to find that.
And that's the thing. I think NASCAR's got to, F1 finds a way to basically serve you a shit sandwich and make you think it's caviar. And I think NASCAR's biggest issue right now is that they can't sell you a product because even if they try and spice it up or try and make it something it's not, like, everybody looks at the racing and you can tell it's just not good. It's just flat out not good. At least with F1, there's the veil of kind of the drama and the stuff like that, but you can only say that it's all Ross Chastain's fault so many times, and then, that storyline begins to lose its luster. So NASCAR's got to do something. They either have to improve their on-track product massively or their off-track product massively, and I have no idea which one they're capable of doing.
I'm not sure what's a taller task either, but
and that's the hard part.
I don't know. We could do a whole nother podcast on all of this, but
yeah.
Anything else from the NASCAR side today, Ad, that we missed here?
No. Have we gotten an update on Kyle Larson yet? Or
they were both okay.
Both okay. Okay, yeah. I like I said, I think we're sitting there and that type of thing.
That shot of Priest in the car, watching him bolt back. That was rough. That was a nasty lick.
It was kind of a miracle to see him get jarred around like he did, and then to be able to kind of immediately, unhook the window net and just let everybody know he's okay. So I guess that's the one thing. Thank God they're safe, man. That was the big part. That was terrifying to watch. Just one of those wrecks that you really kind of hold your breath until you kind of see everybody be okay. And I think I don't know how I missed Kyle Larson, but yeah, glad to hear they're both doing okay, man.
No, you don't ever assume the worst, but when you see a wreck like that, you do worry. So that's the, safety of the car, as much as we talk about the concussion, when it comes to the big hits, this car is definitely safe. I don't think 20 years ago, 30 years ago, we would be talking the same way in this wreck. So love that we're having a good outcome there on a nasty wreck, but a good outcome on the weekend, my friend.
A great outcome.
Show the folks.
A great outcome on the weekend. I am married. I'm iced out now. I'm basically an early 2000s rapper.
And that means, folks, that Anna has a 25% stake in this podcast officially, so you're looking at the majority owner of Breaking Balls. Hello, Bob Perry, CEO. Nice to meet you.
Yes, Bob Perry is now, in the unlikely event of me ever getting divorced, Anna would technically own 25% of the Breaking Balls podcast. And you best
believe I would buy that stake from her and be 75-25 and have all the authority over here.
Do you have any idea how quickly I would buy that? You wouldn't even have a chance to. I just want you to know that. I would not leave the court without that.
Anna, if you're listening, blank check, whatever you need.
Goodness gracious. All these hypotheticals, man. But no, honestly, I could not ask for a better weekend. My friend, I wish for anyone listening to this that you get the opportunity to experience what I did yesterday of just being in a room with your friends and family and just everyone who loves and supports you and wants the best for you, and they're all pulling the rope in the same direction to make sure that you have the best day that you possibly can. And I just realized, I think I always knew I kept good people around, and obviously I've got my co-host here, but it was just it was almost overwhelming to feel the amount of love and support that that everyone there had for Anna and I. So if you're listening and attended the wedding, I know I said thank you there, but thank you guys so much. I truly do not have the words for the amount of gratitude I have. I just, all the love, I got nothing, but an incredible weekend.
Buddy, absolutely beautiful venue, beautiful night, great people.
And
the beef Wellington at that hors d'oeuvre hour was, I could go back and I would convert to Catholicism just for that beef Wellington if that was the only place that served it was that church.
Dude,
it was that good.
Yeah, the hors d'oeuvres, we luckily, dude, so we, after you get married, obviously you take a bunch of pictures, so we're walking past the cocktail hour, and this waitress just comes sprinting. Like, oh my gosh! I'm like, what happened here? So she comes, she goes, do you guys want hors d'oeuvres? yelling. I'm like, yes. I was like, absolutely. She's like, what do you want? I was like, all of it. She's like, okay, sounds good. And then she came back. She's the sweetest lady, but she was like, I'm so sorry. She goes, I was very stressed.
It's fair. So the bride and groom need to eat.
Yeah, dude. And luckily, we had people bringing us water, drinks, everything. I think, dance floor DJ situation. I mean, we spanned decades on that dance floor. There was people who graduated college in the 80s. There was people who graduated college just a few years ago. And all of them were out there on the floor dancing together. Mr. Brightside got a little crazy, and sadly, my co-host did miss that.
I can't believe I missed that, by the way.
Yeah,
I was listening for it all night, because I was making the rounds, let me tell you. I was in rare form, believe it or not. But I was keeping an ear out for Mr. Brightside, and for some reason, it never came, and I thought maybe the DJ didn't. Unfortunately, no, that was on me.
Yeah, Bob Perry, inexplicably going to the restroom when Mr. Brightside was played. A travesty? A hate crime against white people? Maybe?
A hate crime against Missouri, maybe. You never know.
Yeah, I don't know. Are you... this is kind of going to maybe ruffle some feathers here, but do you even like to chant "fuck KU"?
I like to chant "fuck KU." I think I did hear the wedding party like to chant it too, so that at least gave me a little hope that this...
Best part about it is, not a single Mizzou grad, other than you and the wedding party, but we all knew what to chant as soon as it came on, so...
Glad it's rubbed off at least. When that song comes on, everyone knows what to say. So my mark has been instilled regardless if I was there or not. I was there in spirit that moment.
It was important to know that we kept on your legacy even though you weren't present. So I guess that says more about us than it does about you.
Well, yeah. But no, Adam, genuinely, it was an absolutely perfect weekend. I hope for you and Anna's sake that you guys had a great time too. And I hope that you can look back and just think, we did the damn thing. And we did it right. Because, again... Y'all did a 10 out of 10 wedding here.
Yeah, I think Anna, Anna obviously didn't get a ton into her background, but she plans events for a living. She works, she does large scale events like that all the time. And I think I always understood how impressive her and how creative she is and how, just her way to kind of put what's in her head in front of her. It's remarkable, and then there was nothing quite like walking into that reception because obviously I didn't do a ton of the aesthetic. I didn't make a ton of aesthetic choices in this wedding. We'll say I understood what I knew everything that was going to be there, but to tell you that any of it was strictly my idea would just be a downright lie. So we've got to give a ton of credit to Anna because she killed this. She put her heart and soul into this, and it was perfect.
She killed it, and she's also putting up with you for eternity. Till death, Anna. Till death.
Till death. And that's
a commitment.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, though, because if NASCAR keeps frustrating me, I may stroke out or, have a heart attack here at 35. So this may be quicker than we expect. Who knows?
Well, don't say that. I can't do a solo podcast, which we say that in the next couple weeks with you being gone.
Yes.
Things are going to look a little different here at Breaking Balls for the next 2 weeks, and don't get used to it because I don't like it either. I don't like being without this man.
Yeah.
And the fact that I've even had him in person for a week, I'm going to be ripped away from him for a short time. Hopefully not that short. That's a different story. The next couple weeks are going to be a little different, but we're going to keep on over here at Breaking Balls. I will keep the flag moving.
Yes, and of course, we, just so that way everybody understands, I am going on my honeymoon. I know.
Where are you going?
Yeah, we are going to Paris. I'm going to Paris. I will be looking American and making sure everybody thanks me for World War II. I think that's only appropriate. I'm sure they'll love that. And then after Paris, we fly to Rome. From Rome, we're obviously Catholic, going to the Vatican, that type of thing, doing the tour, and then we're getting on a cruise ship, up, down to Sicily, up the coast of Italy, Greece, Montenegro, Croatia. This is a trip of a lifetime. I sacrificed my time off after the bar for this trip, and let me tell you, I am maybe going to put my phone in the safe and only take it out on Sundays when I know my podcast is hosting. And so that way, if anything goes terribly wrong, we will keep this ship afloat. But Bob, we were talking about the percentage of ownership of this podcast. Briefly, I am giving you a complete and utter agency over the Breaking Balls podcast. You are 100% in control. You can do as you wish. You can do solo podcasts. You can bring on guests from Who knows? Episodes past, maybe.
I don't know, that might be a tease. We might have a familiar face coming on next week for Dover. So keep an eye out there. I won't even give much more than that. If you've listened in our past, you're probably familiar with him. So have a feeling that we may not be alone next week. But the Kansas race after Dover, TBD. I might be alone on that one. You might have a solo breaking Bob. You never know. But stay tuned, folks, because you'll be 2 weeks without Adam, and then the family is back together. So just wanted a little housekeeping there. Everything is fine. Anna is not taking him away from me.
No. We, if there was a marriage, one of these things, marriage is a hell of a commitment,
She committed to a podcast, too.
And that's the thing, when you marry you marry your spouse, you marry their hobbies, their family, all of it.
She married Breaking Balls.
She married Breaking Balls.
I do. I mean, truly.
She truly did. And the fact that she came on this podcast, I mean, like we said, if you haven't listened to that, go give it a listen. It's kind of it's just a little bit different from what we usually do. We kept it on Spotify because obviously we like to keep our racing content kind of separate on YouTube, but it's something worth checking out if you get a chance.
But without anything else, Dad, is there anything you want to tell our folks? Because again, Dad's gonna be gone for the next couple weeks, so
yeah.
Give us a little speech. Give us some words of encouragement. Tell us it's gonna be okay.
This is going to be a lot like when, your dad goes out for cigarettes, and you've heard it before. He may come back, he may not. But what I tell you is, I am not your father. I will never be your father. I will always come back.
You heard him.
And I will be there, and I will bring, whether it be a gallon of milk that he went out to get, a pack of cigarettes. Maybe he went out for a drive and just never came back. That ain't me. I will be back. I will be having so many stories from being frustrated in Europe. Culture shock is going to hit me like a mother, and you guys are going to get that live reaction. So bear with us for 2 weeks. We'll be back to normal after that.
I know that there's going to be a lot of Europe content from Adam where he's going to have a lot of things to get off his chest about how much he hates things over there. So can't wait for that. Yeah, I mean, Adam, I'm looking forward to hearing some stories, obviously. That's going to be a good time.
Yeah.
Nice doing an in-person podcast, though. And this is really nice.
And just the regular racing podcast of just being able to kind of sit here and to understand and to talk to one another and to feed off of each other's energy, man, this is contagious. It's kind of hilarious. We almost did a wide shot for this episode so you guys could see us both laying individually on our queen beds, but we figured this would be a little cleaner.
Well, listen, Ad, I love you so much, but I had a really long night, and I am tired, and I think we need to wrap this one. We were a nomad in Southern California this week.
Absolutely. Like, comment, subscribe. You know what to do. Be a friend, tell a friend. Have a good time, everybody. Bye.